Hello, you're tuning into the Warrior Way podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Wayne. It's been a long time since I last recorded a podcast. I know. I think what just sparked up the idea of podcasting again was yesterday. I was talking to my cousin and somehow I mentioned to her that I had a podcast and I let her listen to it for a bit and she's just asking about stats and whatnot. And honestly, the reason why I stopped podcasting in the first place was because I just felt like I wasn't getting enough listeners as far as I would like. And part of me also felt ashamed in just being so vulnerable and like letting people know about exactly what I was going through. But then again, it helped some people, and right now I'm not working, so I think it'll be nice to just podcast and talk about the things that I've learned in the past, I want to say 6 months since the time that I haven't been podcasting. Just talk about the things that I learned, and it'll like make me feel productive. So one of the things I learned recently was from an online women's circle that I'm a part of. And the sister, Denise, she talked about 5 self-care tools. And these self-care tools are in relation to like rituals and things specifically that you want to do to feel certain emotions. So there's like a self-care tool for feeling grounded. Like what do you do when you want to feel grounded? Another self-care tool for what you want to do when you want to feel uplifted, or like the next self-care ritual is what's a ritual that you can do to nourish your soul. After that, you should also have a ritual like what can you do to become present or centered. And lastly, the last self-care tool ritual is what ritual can you do to feel love. For me to feel grounded, what I like to do is to walk barefoot, especially on grass. Like I don't have grass in my backyard, so I actually just walk on the concrete, but that's totally fine because I was doing that in Maryland too, just putting my feet on the concrete, and usually in the mornings it'll feel super cold and it just makes me feel more just like in my body, because sometimes especially during meditation too, I tend to dissociate where I can't, like it'll say like focus on your foot or something, but I can't, like I don't feel my foot. So that's like one thing that I like to do to ground myself. Sometimes I also just sit on the concrete too. Moving on to the second self-care tool, ritual. To uplift myself, I like to dance. And for me, I have really bad cardio. So a compromise that I came up with is to dance to like half a song. Say the song's about 3 minutes long. I'll just dance and give it my all for a minute and a half or something. Just because when I tend to do this, I get so out of breath and wiped, especially when I do it when I wake up. Next, in order to nourish my soul, what I like to do is freestyle, sing, or there's this playlist on Spotify, and I'll link it in the show notes, but it's a playlist that has R&B instrumentals, and I just like to put it on and just freestyle sing about what I'm currently going through. Usually it'll have to do with like self-love and things like that. But yeah, it's really cathartic, something about it really nice to just hear my soul, hear my voice, and be able to just express myself. A self-care ritual that I have to become present or to center myself is to laugh from my belly. So I'll do like 3 belly laughs. I'm not going to do it on here because it's just going to blow out the speakers. But yeah, no, I got the idea from this one book that mentioned Anne Frank and how every morning she would belly laugh, and at that point all the joy and happiness feelings would just radiate throughout her body, and that would just make her feel better. So I like implementing that for my to become present or centered ritual. And finally, the last ritual is what a ritual in order to feel love. And for me, it's to talk to my family, like have meaningful conversations with them. Because even in the past, I realized like if I'm even going out with friends or whomever and having meaningful conversations with them as well, I still feel empty at the end of the day because I I don't know, there's just something missing. And I noticed that when I check in with my family, like when I was living in Maryland, I would call them and ask about how their day was and how they're doing. It would make me feel more fulfilled. All right, now we're going to move on to the second part of the podcast where we talk about triggers. And in the last month, yes, in the last month, but also in the last 6 months, I've had a lot of time to just really understand like what a trigger means, or yeah, when people say they're triggered. I never really quite understood that before, but I definitely have a good understanding of it now. So a trigger is basically when like it's similar to a deja vu moment where somebody does something and it like triggers. Sometimes it can be like projections. So for example, like one is when I'm in the car with my mom and I like see her driving and sometimes she gets nervous and stuff, that like triggers me and it like makes me hate that part of her because it reminds me of the part of when I'm an anxious driver and like how I hate that part of myself. So that's like an example of a projection trigger. Another example could be like, I mean, as far as trauma goes, of course, if you've been raped or something of that sort, certain, touches can just make you flash back to that moment and just make you feel triggered. But yeah, so I'm going to focus on three triggers. And these triggers all relate to beliefs that I have about myself. Um, and the beliefs are me like not feeling like I'm enough as a person. Also me just feeling like people don't like me. And lastly, me feeling like ashamed for not having plans on the weekends or something, like for example. So for me, the person, yeah, no, I learned so much from Denise and the women's circle that she led. She talked about kind of just keep on asking yourself like why you feel this certain way. So I have this belief that I'm not enough, and she said, all right, well, think back to the first time that you felt like you weren't enough. And for me, it was in kindergarten. So I was sent to kindergarten without knowing a word of English. I just like learned English in school. And I remember this one time, like my kindergarten teacher, Miss Larkin, she had like a signal to show that you needed to use the restroom. I think it may have been like a quiet coyote or something of a signal. So I did that, and so she asked if I had to go use the restroom, and I nodded my head, and she said, and she nodded her head, and she said, "This means yes," and then she shook her head, and like she said, "This means no." And there was just something about it for me where I just felt really like ashamed. I felt like she thought I was stupid or something. Like I did know that, shaking your head means yes, and nodding your head means yes, and like shaking your head means no, but I just didn't verbalize it. But yeah, so that was the first time I felt like I wasn't enough. And then, yeah, so that, like, has to do with me. It relates to my, like, Vietnamese culture and, like, Vietnamese roots and stuff. And, the core of it goes to just me being afraid to be alone. In the sense, like, oh, nobody wants to be friends with somebody who, like, doesn't understand English or something, for example. Now, moving on to the second trigger or second belief that I have. Second belief that I have is that people don't like me. And for me, the first time that I felt that way, and it's a lot of like people, or when I feel like people don't like me, there's like no concrete like reasons. Like there's no truth or proof in the matter, but I just have that thought and that feeling. And the first time that I felt unliked for no good reason was also in elementary school. And my elementary school was like predominantly black, and there were like very few Asian or white or other students. It was predominantly black. But yeah, like some of the other students would just get all up in my face and start like pretending to speak Chinese to me. So similar to like racial slurs in a sense, and it just made me feel really ashamed because like I wasn't doing anything. I was just being myself. Like I physically, appearance wise, like I look like an Asian person. And but yeah, I think for me, once again, this trigger also like goes back to my Vietnamese culture. And finally, for the last belief or trigger, when was the first time that I felt like I wasn't enough as far as fitting up to like social expectations of myself, or just like feeling ashamed for not quote unquote being social enough? It was when I was in middle school, and at that point, like my friends started inviting me out to hang out with them and all of that. And a bunch of the times, like having just strict Asian parents, they don't let you go out and hang out with your friends. And I would just be at home doing homework or, just watching TV or something like that, but basically not hanging out with my friends. I just felt so ashamed for like not quote unquote doing more, like what's expected of me in society. Because like when you're a kid growing up, you may watch a bunch of cartoons and just be on social media or whatever all day, and you don't feel like ashamed for doing that. You're just like saying like, oh, like, well, I just spent the day relaxing or chilling out. But I feel like there's a certain point in your life, like a certain age, where you start feeling just ashamed for example, like binging Netflix all the time, or just not going out and doing typical things that people find to be socially acceptable for your age. And for me, yeah, I just, at that point in my life, I just wanted to be like a normal American tween who just went out and hung out with her friends. Yeah, so once again, this trigger or belief also goes back to just like, to the root of it is that I just want to be American or something. I just wanted to be quote unquote normal. And I'll just break it down really quickly. Earlier, the first time when I mentioned my first belief slash trigger, I said just like keep asking yourself why to get to the root of it. So I'll break down the first one, like why do I feel like I'm not enough? Well, I feel like I'm not enough because, or the first time that I felt like I wasn't enough was in kindergarten, right? Where I like felt like they thought I was stupid because I didn't verbally express that I knew English. And I was like, and then so like, why does it matter so much to me that people, like, if they think I'm stupid or not? Well, it matters to me because, like I said earlier, like nobody wants to be friends with someone who's stupid. And why does anyone, like, what's so bad about like being stupid or not having friends or something like that? And it just goes back to like loneliness. That's a root of, I feel like a lot of people, the root of a lot of their fear comes from like being lonely. And yeah. Oh, and just a heads up, during the full moon, you may be like triggered more. So the full moon is a time where, the moon is full and it's like fully illuminated. And so it shows your shadow side, right? Your like ego, your inner critic. It really amplifies that part. So just like a heads up about that and triggers. Alright, y'all, so the mantra that I want to leave y'all with is you are worthy of love. Alright, y'all, so the mantra that I want to leave y'all with is I am worthy of love. I've started saying this mantra like last night when I was going to bed, and also this morning when I woke up, because Denise was saying that right before you go to bed and right when you wake up, that's like the best time to reprogram your brain and your subconscious mind to like not have these limiting beliefs. And so I started saying that, and I mean, you know, it's just in response. Oh my goodness, my grandma's coughing in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. But yeah, so it's basically just in response to what I shared as far as my like triggers goes, and that like limiting belief of just feeling like I'm not enough. So yes, please know that and repeat after me for yourself. I am worthy of love. Alrighty, well, until next time, y'all, listen to your intuitions and take care of yourself. Bye. Thanks for listening.